My name is Olu Olawole. I'm an Ifa priest. I'm a tech enthusiast and one of the few young Babalawos Nigeria have that is blessed with. I advocate for the inclusion of our cultural knowledge into our technology and how we can use it to transform our society at large. So there are so many stereotypes that is attached to our spirituality. And obviously, there are so many young people who want to come into our spirituality, want to come back to their roots, but who find it difficult to do that, who don't know what to do or where to go to or whom to meet or how to go about it. But then I think that I stand as an ambassador for young people within my age range to come back to their roots and then to not just come back to their roots, to be able to locate and go through the journey of self-realization by themselves. So I think that defines who I am. It's quite a long story, and I, well, let me say I'm stubborn to have navigated the two different fields because there's an intersection that at a point I felt like, would I be able to go through this, considering that I was given birth into a deeper life family, and how I had to do that mental shift from that background to an IFA background. So my parents were deeper lifers and I was one deeper lifer, and I just felt like this is a calling, like something that, because nobody preached to me, not like I had a problem. You know, some people had problems and they felt like you have to go through your ancestral rites so before you can, solve those problems. But then I never had any problem before I made those choices rather. And my parents never took me to Babalawo's house before, not like but then I started researching about, I wanted to know who I was and how I can, get to understand myself better as a person. I started studying history and then I realized that from the framework of who I am, that was right back when I was in GSS2. So I began to, because my mother was a teacher, my mother runs a school, a private and primary and secondary school. And it gave me access to books, and we had our own personal library at home. So it was not until I read this Walt Rodney's book, How Europe Wanna Develop Africa, and then this other book by Chancellor Williams that said The Destruction of Black Civilization, that I came to know the enormous powers that was embedded in our spirituality, in our culture, in ourselves as people. So I decided that, I'm going to discover who I am in a way that's ingenious to me, that is myself, that is me. So I begin to do research. So, the way nature works in such a way that your thought pattern, the energies that flow through you, you begin to experience them on a physical note. So something happened in the year 2001. And that year, my parents had like this big financial crisis. We're living in Meron estate, in an estate in Meron. So my parents had this big. My mother was in the hospital for about 7 months. The family was at the verge of scattering. My father was nowhere. Everybody, so much thing happened that year. So we had no choice but to relocate. My mother lost her school, lost her properties, lost her so many things like that. So we relocated from Meron because my mother had a land in Songwater. She just bought that land, like who knows anything. So we had to relocate to Songo. And the funny thing is that we relocated to a place where we were living side by side with the Babalawo. And that was my first encounter with an Ifa priest. So it was something that, Emma love Benyon. Don't eat from their food, don't drink from their water, don't talk to them, There was this wide, gap that says that these people are the exact opposites of anything called good. So don't near them, But the funny thing is that along the line, we realized, not just me, the entire community realized that the children of the so-called Babalawo were the most upright children in the society. Like if there's anything that happened in society and these children were called to testify, everybody agrees that the testimony of these children are low and built, genuine, factual, and So I began to ask myself, it got to a point that I realized that I enjoyed this environment. So there are some character influence that came as a result of me knowing these people or me living side by side with these people. It gave me first-hand information about people that have been so much stereotyped, so much, because almost all our prayers are targeted towards people. All the people that have altars around us, that blah 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 blah, let them die by fire. But unfortunately, these people are not dying. How many times we want to kill them? You know, and I begin to relate with the family. So it was because of that family that my parents did our fence. So they don't want us to relate with them. They don't want us to network with them. So, and the funny thing is that these people come to us with food every day. So if they, because it is the custom that if you probably kill a goat or kill anything, you have to share. Because deep down in Africa, we practice communalism. We are community conscious. We tend to, because in fact, in some part of Nigeria, the community contribute money to send you to complete your finalization right. So the community invests in you, both spiritually and physically. That's why in some part of Igbo culture, you see that the community send children to school or send them to abroad. So it happens in our African culture. In Africa, the community takes care of you, and then you think of the community first before any other thing. So it's a communal thing. It is embedded in the spirituality that if you cannot eat alone, you have to share it with your neighbors and your enemies alike. So these people knew that we had no iota of love for them, but they still come with their food every day. The food is spicy. I want to eat the I want to eat the goat and all these things. But then our parents, at first, they were rejecting them. I got to a point that because of the tenacity of these people, I felt like, well, we've rejected so many, so let us just accept one with specific instruction, go and treat in the bin. So it started from me eating out of this food and all that. This thing is sweet too. You cannot, I did not die now. The deity did not kill me. Nobody is pursuing me my dream. So my advent into African spirituality, aside from the fact that it is something that I was called to do, something I later realized along the line in my life that this is a calling, this is like a divine calling for me to be a priest, because I eventually discovered about 2 years ago that I came from a lineage of priests, and that is like a roll call for me to, I was the first son of the first son of the first son of the, you know, something like that, and it is like a roll call. My father didn't go through that route, he suffered for it. My grandfather didn't go through that route, he suffered for it, and it's something I just realized that, thank God for my own life. I won't have to suffer for the things that were supposed to be like a generational thing for all of us. So the challenge that my parents had stopped me from going to my parents' school. So I had to move to Alakuko from Songo on a daily basis, this time of this Molue time. So I discovered again that not far from my school, there is a very big Babalawo house. In fact, that time, the person was the president of the International Council for Ifa Religion. It's Shola Badipupola, one of the foremost Ifa priests. It's an acclaimed, it's a world acclaimed. So it gave me different perspective of two types of Ifa priests. The one beside my house was not really educated, it's quite dirty and all that, but then there were some values that you could always pick out from him and from his household. But this new one was educated, he studied from the University of Ife, Obafemi Awolowo University in Ife. The children were educated, we had so many white people learning, studying Ifa in our environment and all that. So from school, I always found an excuse to go to the Ifa. So I started learning Ifa since I was in GSS2, unknowing to my parents. So I started studying, and I was studying not because I think that gave me an edge as a priest. I was studying not because I felt like I wanted to do this as my own calling, like I wanted to work out of the result of this. So not on about 4 or 5 years ago, I never imagined that I could make a penny being an Ifa priest. So it was something that happened out of love, or to some extent, I would say maybe my elder, so to say, would probably push me, or my destiny is pushing me to walk the walk of destiny. But then, when I got to the place, I realized that there were people, extremely educated, professors, scholars in this field. I met with so many people, Professor Sophie Oluwole, so many different people. I feel like where is the bastardization coming from? Why? This is a beautiful environment. I find solace in that environment. I do not even have time to think of my problems because I really do not have one when I'm in that environment. So it aided my learning. So I learned, voraciously, because I never felt like I wanted to make money out of it. So I was not learning rush because I wanted to I was learning. I was taking all my time. I wanted to know every bit of everything from every spectrum of information that is coming my way. So it hindered my learning. And then my parents didn't know. So but they just discovered that as I was losing interest in going to church, because I got to a tipping point. I felt like, no, Christianity was not for me, or is not for me, whichever way it is. So, but then there was no lever for me to tell my parents that I was not going to church again. So I was doing all the rights that I had to do, because for every stage of learning, there's a right that you have to undergo, because this is a strictly spiritual journey. And on a particular day, my mother had a dream. She dreamt that I was putting on a white cloth and I was, carrying a baby lion like a cub. Her intent was that, this guy wants to do money ritual. So she called me. She was preaching to me in my mother's formula. My mother's way of, talking to you was that she would probably just give you the Bible first of all. She would tell you the passage you open to. She has read it on her own personal note. So you are the one that is going to read the instruction in the Bible to yourself. She will now start asking you, kí ló wí? Bíbélì sọ pé ká má jalè mọ́. Kí ló sọ? Ká má jalè mọ́. So you understand that it is wrong for you to steal. So she gave me the Bible passage I was reading, that we should not serve God and mammon, we should not do this, that, because she was saying some things and all that. So there is this emblem that is Ifa related. People who use this are Ifa traditional people. So I had mine. I couldn't wear it publicly. So I was hiding mine. So anytime I'm at home, I will hide it. Anytime I leave the house, I put it on. So people were observing some things, and they were coming to report to my mother and all that. But she never catch me. So there's no way she could actually accuse me like that. So it got to a point. She was like, I wanted to do, because there was nowhere she could tie those things to. She finally discovered this. There's nowhere she could tie this to. So she tied it to the fact that I wanted to do money ritual. So the church started the fasting and prayer on me and all that. Revival, that the devil in me should come out, the issue in me will come out. And there was a time that we did a program called Issue is Not Satan. So I, out of, my own nonchalance, because during those periods I was extremely cautious. So I wore the Issue is Not Satan cloth, and then I snapped with it. So that was where that was the straw that broke the camel back. How did the Oyinbo used to say it in English? That was where the war started. So it was glaring that now there's evidence that you want to do money ritual. So that was when she now related the dream she had to me. I dreamed this. So the moment she mentioned me carrying a baby lion, that moment I knew that it was my calling to become a priest. Although I fought that calling for so many years, and I paid dearly for it. Because I remember a verse in the way we used to greet Ifa. Because in the temple, we got to a point I leave home 2-3 days, not come back, and I stay in the temple overnight. And in the morning, when they are greeting Ifa, when they are doing their devotions, there is a particular verse of Ifa that I reflected back to the moment she mentioned that cup. The Ifa goes, Ifa says, Ifa ojire lu ni mo po elere mo kun mo tan mesi ile lawe gbola joko ọmọ kekin tí mo yin irin fọn Ifa ìwọ lára iwájú ìwọ àwa lérò ẹ̀yìn ìwọ ló ń kọ́ mọ lọ́rọ̀ bí iye kan ọmọ ìwọ lọmọ ẹni rẹ ìwọ lọmọ ẹni rẹ ìwọ lọmọ ẹni kan gàsà bí àdó ẹ̀wí nílé àdó erinmi lóde ọwọ̀ ìwọ lọba tó sàrún dẹ̀fà ìwọ lọmọ ejò méjì tí ń sáré gànràngànràn lórí eréwé ìwọ lọmọ iná jókòó má jóhun ìwọ lọmọ iná jókòó má ràn dẹ́lùjù dàrí wá dáṣọ rò mí mọ̀ pé eléré mo kún mọ́ tán mẹ̀sí ilé ìlàwẹ́ bọ́lá jókòó ọmọ kìkì tí méyìn rí fọn Ifá ní bá bá ṣe kó ni bẹ́ẹ̀ là á kí ni Ifá ní bá ṣe kí ni bẹ́ẹ̀ là á jẹ́ ni Ọ̀rúnmìlà pẹ̀lẹ́ o ọmọ ẹkùn jẹransùn ọmọ pópó ntóró ọmọ ràn mí lọ́wọ́ gbọ́n lẹ́sẹ̀gì àwọ̀ tó bá tètè dé àrí kásẹ̀gì èyí tó tètè dé àrí káyùn sẹ̀gì ni wọ́n ká àwọn káyùn ìjìgbálẹ̀kẹ́ ni wọ́n ká àwọn ní ká ikú gbọ́ọ̀rọ̀ Ifá mo wá kí ẹnì kan àbúsí ẹ̀làbùtọ̀ mo wá kí ẹni dòdò àbísẹ̀ Ifá mo wá kí ẹni ìfẹ́ ò dá ayé bí ojúmọ́ tí mo wálé ayé Ọbaládé òjíire lónìí abo òjíire ògòyàndà paro Ifá òjíire. So the point that struck my attention was like ọmọ ẹkùn jẹransun. So I went to my Oluwo, who was at that point in time Sholagbade Bubola. I went to him. I said, sir, this was the dream my mother had to me. And to me personally, this is what I related to it. The man just looked at me and said, Babalawo ló ti wá. That was the thing he just said. Babalawo ló ti wá. That is, you came from the generation of priests. So it got to a point. So by the time that my parents would come out open and, in an antagonist format, I had already finished my secondary school. So I've learned, how many years I've been learning secretly without my parents noticing. But then, the Babalawo was beside my house, observed that I was learning from. Because if they are doing their sacrifice and they are right in their house, and they are doing some chant, sometimes I complete the chant and they are, how did you know? I was just hiding. It got to a point I felt like, no, I can't hide any longer. So then I was in Yabatech then. I get admission to Yabatech. I spent extra 5 years at home. So for you to know how many years it took me to hide that identity. So when I left home, I was in Yabatech 2012. And I came back home. I was free. You have this level of freedom you have when you gain admission and then you are on your own and then you are I got admission. My parents said, I told them, see, come. I'm doing traditional blah 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 blah. All hell broke loose. No more money, nothing. You are on your own because they cannot fund you to become a child of the devil. So my mother specifically called me Antichrist. I was the Antichrist. So there was strict funding for me. But we thank God. I thank Ifa because it got to a point the director of my school paid out of my school fees. So it was like that's a different story entirely. But then there were so many revivals, so many blah blah blah, so many fasting and prayer, so many group fasting, so many obey fasting that my parents did. But what I noticed was that my father, in all this fiasco, my father didn't say a word. He was all silent all through. I never knew why. I didn't know what until recently. So it was all my mother. It was my mother's doing. Because I was the Antichrist. My younger ones, I was the first born, my younger ones would not collect a food from me. I'm eating, they won't, there was this impedance, like, don't go near, don't, So to some extent, when I come back home, I don't sleep in our house. I stay in some of my friends' place, or I find a Babalawo's place because it's like an ethic in an environment that if I get to any village, I can always look out for a Babalawo is there and then sleep over. Because there's no village in this part of Africa that does not have a priest. Although there are some regalia there are some things that you see to make you know that this would probably be a Babalawo or something. But then you can always talk to people, a Johnny Bonile, Fawa maybe. So even people who don't know or who don't come out openly, because I fail to believe that people do not know what Ifa is, or people do not comment to that way. People come to divination, albeit secretly or whatever way you want to do it. When people have problems, people come to priests and people come to pastors, people look for divine solutions to their problems. So people always know where Ifa priest houses in the community. They might not go there openly or they might not go there at all, but then people always know. So once you ask for directions. So once I get there, I'll introduce myself and there is a rite that they will do for me. It is called rite of passage to probably know if you are a priest truly or you are. So if you can undergo the rite and then you pass the rite, then you welcome as a priest and then they treat you as one, as an Oluwo. So I think that was how my sojourn through becoming an Ifa priest. And then along the line, once I got my own freedom to steal my own, it took me many years, but then not until recently that I had to, the fiasco that was between myself and my parents ended because there were some revelations that happened to them and I feel like, let us leave him. So even now my parents still my mother still go to the Babalawo, but then, don't look at Jesus, Abura Boye, we all do our own separate things. Nobody is disturbing anybody, nobody is impeding anybody. And then she respects me for what I do, who I am. Does not mean that I don't do divinations for her. Does not mean that I don't do rituals for her. We have gone through the level of understanding that I can do chores for her, I can do, there's so many things I would have told her, see, this thing is coming to happen to you, and then happens to her maybe in a month's time or 2 months time, and then those revelations actually, augmented my position as a priest, and then gave me a soft land with my parents. I have been able to initiate my younger brother, I think 2 of my younger brothers, we are 5 in numbers. So before I die, I will initiate everybody, including my parents, I believe so. So that was how my sojourning to becoming an Ifa priest. So over the time, I started moving around because if I need akirikofa ló máa rí Ifá rere kọ́, akiriko ogun ló máa rí ogun rita, kọ́ mi nífá kí n kọ́ ẹ nífá, fi ṣègùn hàn mí kí n kọ́ ẹ nírẹ̀lẹ̀. So Ifa says that it is he who travels far and wide to study that becomes much more approved and much more knowledgeable than any other person. So it helped me to move around. I studied Ifa to really more. Abeokuta, went to Parafa in Ikorodu, studied Ifa in Benin, studied Ifa in so many places, studied Ifa in Agege, studied Ifa in Agboa, studied Ifa in Ekpe, studied Ifa in Djibouti, Osun State. So I was just moving all around, and it helped me to broaden my, to have a broad knowledge of what Ifa is, and they helped me basically to grow and into becoming an Olu at a very tender age. Studied electrical engineering, but don't tell anybody. I don't know the difference between live and neutral. Well, the word witchcraft and sorcery is a thing of the West. It's like in England they have sorcery, school of sorcery and witchcraft and all that. Our own is Aje. It's not witchcraft. You cannot translate our Aje. Aje is Aje. Aje is not witchcraft. Witchcraft is their own. So they are the one who understand what is craft to them. Half is Aje, Ìyá mi Aje, a symbol of motherhood. Ìyá mi Aje, Èmi Aje, Ìyá mi Aje, Bàbá mi Aje, Èmi tí kálára mi Aje, ọmọ Aje kan kò ní ṣoògùn kó má jẹ. So Aje is feminine by name. It's a conglomerate of women. You get my point? So if you are to relate witchcraft to Aje in our own spiritual cosmology, it means that Aje is a, how will I call it? It's a part of the entire spectrum, not like it's a spectrum, it stands on its own. So everybody has hierarchy, everybody has specific duties that he or she carry, just like a government. So let's assume that Ifa is the president, because Ifa ló ní ìmọ̀ tá a fi ń tò ilé ayé yìí. So the knowledge at which we use to ensure that all things are in order. So because the highest level of spirituality is neutrality, where there is an equal amount of positivity and negativity. So I think that balance is the highest level of spirituality. So once you can control both positivity and negativity, you are beginning to attain the height of neutral balance or spiritual neutrality. So spiritual neutrality is a very important thing in one's spiritual growth. Now, Ifa is the one who owns the knowledge to help you navigate your way around life, such that in a world that is extremely polar, it can be either positive or negative. You live a balanced life. So let's assume Ifa is the president, Ifa ni Olórí. So we have all the other Orishas who have specific duties that they carry out. So the idea is particular about justice. It is the judicial system of our spiritual cosmology. So what they do is that they have this impartial judgment irrespective of friend or foe. So they are the one who monitor, they're like the court, the judicial system where all undoings are being reported to, and then it is carried out judiciously irrespective of relationship or no relationship. So that's one. That is the duty of the Iyamiaje. So you understand that a judge will have the power to discern which is truth or which is not true. So it's Omo. So they have the power to know whether you are, once you bring something to them, they know. So àwọn ni wọ́n máa ń dá ẹjọ́ láì jẹ́ kí kan fi sí ìkan. Ifá sọ nínú ọ̀sà méjì, Ifá ní ọ̀nà ẹ̀bùrú ló máa ń dáwọ́ olúwa ẹ̀ tilẹ̀. Adífá fún èjì ọ̀sá tó fẹ́ lọ yan orí ọ̀la lọ́dọ̀ bá Aládépẹ̀tù. That is, it is only when you want to go the crooked way, that is when you always have problems with the witches. So for every negativity that you have exerted in the world, there is a panel that will look at it and say, okay, you. So there's always room for you to, you know, undo the negativities or to appeal or to appease in a time, in an environment or in a condition where you have exerted so much negativities. So and then you have been found wanting. So they call your attention to it. How do they call your attention to it? You have dreams because they speak with your leader, which is your spiritual head, who stand as your own spiritual representation. So they speak to your leader. Sometimes through that you probably go through dreams and then you say, I'm having this condition, I'm having this, I'm having this, you see this in dream. And then you interpret the dream to mean that this is what is supposed to happen to you. That is when you now begin to look for your pastor or your alpha or your priest or to say, Kini Maashi. So those ones, we all serve as an ambassador to say, oh, this is what we. So we'll go back to Ifa, which is the knowledge through which the world exists. We'll go back to Ifa and say, okay, for this thing that is happening to you, this is whom you should meet. It is Egun that you have offended that took your matter to the court of law. Go and settle your difference with Egun, and the Egun will withdraw the cases. So you realize that once you do the normal thing that you're supposed to do, things will just come back normal. So it augments the popular saying, so that as it is on earth, so it is in heaven.